So hello everybody and good day. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Somalit Hogan. I'm Regional Director with the Massachusetts Small Business Development Center Network. My office is located in Springfield, Massachusetts. We're very proud to be able to host this in a huge series of webinars on various topics. We've already covered restaurants, reopening guidance for restaurants, reopening guidance for hair salons. We did those last week. They're both available. Both recordings are available on our website and on our YouTube channel. So you may want to go there. It's msbdc.org. In today's webinar, we're going to discuss industry-specific guidance for reopening your hospitality business. And we have a presenter today. She's a SCORE mentor. Her name is Heather Turner. She will be doing today's presentation. For those of you who are on the phone, I highly advise that you re-log in to Zoom to be able to see the slides. But if you can't, that's okay. You will want to rewatch this in the future. And also, we have a great a guest speaker today, a very special guest speaker, Jay Candelario, who joins us from Jay's Bed and Breakfast in Holyoke. This and all the series of webinars that we'll be hosting are being brought to you thanks to a collaboration of technical assistance business providers here in the region and all over Massachusetts, including the Massachusetts Small Business Development Center Network, SCORE, the Center for Women in Enterprise, Mastro Capital Corporation, Valley Community Development, Common Capital, Franklin County CDC, as well as the offices, the MSPDC offices at Salem State and Clark University. And of course, thank you to our stakeholders who provide the funding for these programs for us, the Small Business Administration, the State of Massachusetts Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development, UMass Eisenberg School of Management, and we are accredited by America's SBDC. So welcome everybody to today's webinar. And without further delay, I'm going to ask Heather to go ahead and start her presentation.
Thank you so much. And I am going to share my screen as well. Hi, everybody. So my name is Heather Turner. I am a SCORE mentor. So I am a SCORE mentor for Merrimack Valley SCORE in New Hampshire and also Western Massachusetts SCORE in Massachusetts. I'm also the marketing director for ALP, which is the Association of Lodging Professionals. We are the largest B&B and small lodging association in the United States. So I know a lot about lodging and a lot about, unfortunately, all of these things that are going along with opening up. Now, for Massachusetts, there are a couple of URLs that I am going to put into chat, and I can refer to them at the end and make sure I share them with everybody. But this first one is the mass.gov safety standards and checklist operators for lodging. And I do want to make a couple of notes on this. That is going to be one of the links that I've shared. You may or may not have seen this by now. But requiring face coverings for all workers and guests when inside hallways and common areas, except when an individual is unable to wear a face covering due to a medical condition or disability. I'm going to be sharing a link from Seyfarth and Shaw, who is a legal entity, and they're talking about some issues with potentially people saying that they are wearing masks because of a disability. I'm not going to go into discussion about that because I am not a lawyer, but I do think it is very important for every hospitality business to actually read this and kind of understand what's going on. These are a couple of the quick other things that I wanted to touch on is following each departure, considering leaving guest rooms vacant for 24 hours. And it says consider. This really is something, though, that is not just going to be about your own lodging facility, but something that's impacting your reservation systems and also other links into your reservation systems. So if it's tying into OTAs like Expedia, for example, and Booking.com, they need to be in communication with your reservation system, or if there's no direct link, you need to be physically and online in communication to make sure that that actually happens, that distancing in terms of guest stays happen. Now, lodging operators must inform guests at the time of reservation that check-in Commonwealth policy is urging travelers to self-quarantine for 14 days. Now, most other states in surrounding Massachusetts are actually requiring guests to sign a statement saying they had been self-quarantining. I don't know how that's going to be enforced in Massachusetts as of yet, or whether it will be enforced. But I know from a hospitality owner's perspective, you may want some more information as to where they have been in. And again, I'm not a lawyer, but as a personal perspective, I think that I would actually institute something like that. This is very important, that keeping cleaning logs that include date, time, and scope of the cleaning that you are doing in your facilities is extremely important. And I think having that documentation on file for probably some years to come is also going to be important. We have seen, but thankfully not have anything gone to process yet, where people are considering suing lodging facilities for perhaps catching COVID. Having to actually prove that at a facility, I think, is going to be extremely difficult because people are going outside. It's not like they're going to a hotel or a bed and breakfast and staying in the facility itself for days and days. You can't control where people are going, where they're going to do some outside activities or going to a restaurant or doing anything else outside of the lodging facility. Proving that, I think, is going to be tough. But I think keeping cleaning logs that include the date, time, and scope of the cleaning that your facility is doing is extremely important. Now, I've had a lot of lodging facilities ask, can we state this? No mask, no shirt, no shoes, no service. And again, I am not a lawyer, so I can't speak for the legal perspective, but I do know that this is your own facility. You can request guests do this. And Semilid had a question for me about this. And from the perspective of, can you require it? No, as far as I know, you cannot. But I think that you should and can put in as many places as possible, both on your website, your social media, in any correspondence that you have with guests and potential guests, especially in confirmation letters, that you are asking guests to wear masks. So making sure that you at least tell them this is important. Whether you can require them to do this or not is very questionable, unfortunately. Whether someone could claim they have a disability and don't wear a mask is getting into areas in ADA, which are very much up in the air. So again, I do encourage people to read the link that I'll be sharing after I stop. Okay. This is something, unfortunately, I'm trying to touch on the scary stuff first before I touch into the operations part. But I do want lodging facilities to be prepared for this. Is please be prepared that there are going to be guests that are going to be unhappy with you above and beyond. This is a recent review from someone that I work with up here in New Hampshire. And New Hampshire just opened up recently, and they told this guest, I'm sorry, we can't take a reservation at this facility. And the potential guest, threatened to leave a bad review and did. Now, they were actually asking the business owner to break the law. What I would say is, please be prepared for this and have something typed up as a response to this. And if you're looking at reviews, it's very personal because it's your own business. Take a step back before you respond to the review. Take a deep breath, because the moment you respond to that, it's out there. Even if you change it and delete it, someone still could have taken a screenshot. And it's all for the thousands and thousands of other people out there that will see the review and potentially see screenshots again, even if you've changed that. But I would ask people to please be prepared for that. If it doesn't happen, that is fantastic, and I truly hope it doesn't. But I've heard a lot of stories within the past few weeks from both restaurants and lodging facilities of people just not being very happy. And I would also ask that people understand, people right now are under a huge amount of stress, and unfortunately that snowballs and impacts other people that they interact with. That's not an excuse, but I think when you're dealing with people like this, trying to be a bit more understanding can also help on the owner's side. What I would also ask is, please plan that if you get sick, what is going to happen to your business? Nobody wants to think about this, but most businesses have not prepared for this. And in the case of a lodging facility, you also need to have plans in place for what happens if a guest gets sick and they are staying at your facility. You need to have an operations plan. It doesn't have to be humongous, but you should have a plan in place for if this happens. Again, we hope that it doesn't, but it's better to have a plan in place for if it does. Okay. Now, a lot of the questions that I've been getting is how do we handle check-ins? Some lodging facilities may already have kiosk check-ins or might have mobile or touchless check-ins. But what happens if you have a front desk? What happens if you're a smaller establishment and you don't have or even can't afford something like a check-in or a check-in-less kiosk? So they are actually recommending these plexiglass shields. They're not pretty for sure, but they certainly do the job. That is certainly an option. If you have keys, this is also something that I've had a lot of questions about. In most hotels, they either have key cards already. A lot of them do have touchless openings, so you can open the doors with your mobile phone. But if you do have physical keys, this has kind of become the standard from lodging facilities that I have talked to, is not just handing somebody the key, but having keys where a guest can go and pick them up. If you're in a bigger facility, obviously you would want a staff member making sure that someone picked up the correct key, but making sure that this key was sanitized properly and it's actually given that impression to the person picking up the key. A lot of the questions that I've been getting and the trends that I've been seeing in the lodging industry itself have been that people do want to see that you are cleaning more, and most lodging facilities do a great job in the first place of doing that. But because this is so much more enhanced, because we are asked to do so much more than normal, just the appearance of a lot of things, even if they're small things like keys, for example, or in many lodging facilities, there people are using blankets and extra throw pillows on beds. Those are being removed from those facilities, and plain white duvets and sheets with no extra decorative pillows are becoming the new norm in a lot of facilities as well. Now, Hilton, for example, actually has their own safety program where they're actually putting a door sticker on there. I know some facilities are not putting door stickers on, but they're putting door hangers on. The American Hotel and Lodging Association has rolled out a safe stay program that has a fairly extensive list of things that a property should be doing. If you have not investigated that, I do encourage you to check that out. One of the other encouragements from many state, local, and also international facilities is that you have cleaning stations. Now, not everybody can be hand sanitizers are just like that. They can't be as professional, if you want to call it that, as this. But even having a sanitizer station with a bottle of Purell and some wipes next to it that can be easily cleaned is also very acceptable. Again, it's the look of how people are addressing this. So when guests are coming to your facility to stay, a lot of the impressions they're going to get is going to be on how they're seeing things. Are they seeing that you have hand sanitizer stations? Are they seeing that your guests and also your staff are practicing good hygiene and safe social distancing? Many of these things that we have taken for granted in the lodging industry, whether it's small or large, where it's self-service, are going to become maybe a thing of the past for a while, maybe permanently in some cases. A lot of facilities are going to alternatives instead of self-serve coffee stations. They're offering things like self-service coffee delivered to one's door. So with a French press, for example, or many facilities, especially the smaller ones, are offering goodies for guests to take advantage of, and instead of a plate of cookies, now they're all individually wrapped. So there's going to be a lot of changes per types of property. What works for a hotel is not necessarily something that's going to work for a small lodging facility, but across the board, we're all going to have to be paying a lot more attention to industry standards that is out there, and also the checklist, and also double checking. So if we have staffs, for example, that are supposed to be cleaning rooms and also cleaning common areas in the facility, that's something that owners and managers are going to be having to add to their to-do list, to do a lot more double checks and spot checks of things. Now, I think this is extremely important, which is messaging. This is actually from Chili's, and Chili's, I think, has one of the better that I've seen out there displays of what they are doing to address COVID concerns with customers. And I know Chili's isn't a lodging facility, but I'm using this as an example because it's very clear. And it's also, it's also using wording that is specific. So when you think of clean and you think of squeaky clean to me means it's very, very clean. So when you're thinking about using some wording in terms of your advertising, what you have on your website, what you have on your social media, start taking a look at some of these bigger companies out there. So hotels, restaurants, restaurant chains, for example, and look at how they're promoting COVID safety standards. Most of these companies have big marketing teams behind them. And, some of the things that they're coming up with, I really like for good examples. So, look at what's out there, look at some of the wording that's out there, dine-in guests, for example, seating parties safely apart and limiting seating based on local mandates. Look at some of the wording, pick up some of those keywords to use in some of your own advertising. Okay. Now, this is important in terms of messaging out there to guests and potential guests. Most websites that I've seen on lodging facilities so far, except for the really big hotel chains, have not really put much out there in terms of COVID and what they are doing to make guests safe and potential guests safe. And I think this is really important because there's going to be, and there is now, several types of guests. There's the guests that really don't care. They think this is all going to blow over. They don't think that anything has anybody to worry about. But I think there's a much larger percentage of people that do care and are going to be very much on top of this and aware of this for the next couple of years, if not longer. Hopefully this won't be around as long, but we don't know that right now. But in terms of messaging, you have to tell people. People are not going to just assume that your property is doing more safety standards, is doing upper cleaning things that you should be doing or that are required by the state or even suggested by people like HNLA, for example. So the more that you can put messaging out there on your website, on your social media, on your social media posts, because I've seen too many lodging facilities that their idea of updating guests is a social media post here and there. They don't have anything on their website, or they have things on their website, but it's buried under many, many tabs on the site itself. So when you're looking at how you're advertising and what you're giving out there for people to see, for potential guests to see, think of the impression that you're giving them, or in some cases, if you're not telling them what you're doing, you're not giving them. So I'd ask you to look at all of your advertising with kind of a little bit of insight of what the guest sees and the guest perspective. And if you were going to be a potential guest staying at your facility and you're not seeing anything in terms of telling them or you what you're doing, that's something that you probably need to address. Okay. Now, this is also important. It is very much falling into operations, is as many of you have noticed, food prices are on the increase. This is going to continue for a while. I track market reports and trends daily, and I'm still seeing a huge increase in most things that are marketable. If you've been to the supermarket lately, you might still see a shortage of things like flour in the retail sector. But things like chicken, for example, beef, are all continuing to go up because many parts of our supply chain for food supply, unfortunately, are disrupted or broken, and they will continue to be for a while. So if you're a small facility and you're just serving breakfast, it may not impact you as much. But if you're a hotel or a smaller or a medium lodging facility and you're serving other meals, you really need to take a look at your pricing for your menus and what you're serving, because this really can impact your pricing and what you offer to your guests for a long time to come. And you'll have to keep keeping in track of it because these things are going to continue to fluctuate wildly in the next 6 months plus. Okay. One of the other questions that I've been getting a lot of is, are dining rooms small or large? We're going to have to readjust where and how people can seat. So this particular inn is somebody that I work with up here in New Hampshire. He has 13 guest rooms and he has 20 seats. He generally has a couple of seatings, and this is normally how his guest room is laid out. Obviously, there's not 6 feet between all of these, so we've had to look at his inn and do a little bit of revamping. So these were a couple of options that we came up with to practice good social distancing. In this particular first option, there's actually plexiglass barriers that quite a few restaurants are instituting in between those people dining. He decided not to go with this because it doesn't look nearly as nice. And also, this is a fairly small dining room. I mean, it isn't actually that small, but it is small in terms of having 8 people in here. People, when we talked about this with some of his potential guests, they still felt that even with the barriers, that this was too close together. So this was a revised plan that we came up with for his inn. Now, when you measure out your facility, whether you have a big restaurant with your lodging facility or just a small dining room, you also need to think not just about spacing for tables, but also flow. So in this particular example, this is the kitchen. So there's going to be 2 entrances into where people are going, into the dining room, sitting room, and porch. People serving food and also clearing tableware and glassware are going to have to go through this way and back, and through this way and back, as well as guests. So how much interaction are you going to have at touch points? And also, how many things are these people going to potentially interact with as they go by? So right here, there is a armoire with a little bit of a corner at it. And we actually watched people as they went by here. And what they did was they put a hand on here as they went by. So this was an additional touch point that as they went through here, they needed to make a mental note and a physical note to themselves to actually clean that touch point because it's now a high traffic area. This sitting room normally was not a high traffic area, but it certainly is now. So these are all things to take into consideration. Now, one of the other points that I've also seen when people are doing these diagrams for distancing, what they're not doing is they're not pulling the chairs out all the way. So when you have those 6 feet that are supposed to be between tables and between people, you're not taking into account the fact that somebody is sitting in there. So what I've seen, unfortunately, a lot of people do is they're pushing the chairs into the table and then they're measuring that pushed in chair next to the next push in chair. And that's actually about a foot plus of space that you should have been taking into consideration. So as you readjust all of these facilities for your dining areas, you really do need to look at that, but also very much so pay attention to your flow. Flow is important just for a regular perspective of how your facility operates, but this is very, very important, especially with social distancing. What I'd really recommend is to have owners and all staff do walkthroughs and also to have conversations with other people as they walk through. And the reason I suggest that is because when we do a dining room layout for a restaurant, for example, you'll find that as people have a discussion with another person, so you have a guest, for example, having a conversation with a spouse, those people are going to be next to each other, and they're also going to touch things that they may not be aware of. So having a conversation with someone else as you walk through and have someone else follow them and watch what they do is very, very important because you'll pick up some additional high touch areas that you may not have been aware of before. Okay. And I don't want to cut into Jay's time any more than I have to, and I hope we have some questions. So Samala, did we have any questions?
Yes, thank you so much for covering all of this information. So important. I was making a few notes over here,
Mhm.
and on my, especially on Facebook, we do have quite a few people watching there now as well, and seeing if they have any questions. It does strike me like one question that I would have as a hospitality business here. Um, where do I go for? How do I come up with a plan in terms
Mhm.
of everything that you've covered is great, but either a financial plan to be able to pull off some of these changes in my business? What would you recommend to folks in terms of where could they go for guidance for that?
Okay, I know that SCORE has some guidance for reopening. I know some of the SCORE chapters, and I think it's SCORE Cape Cod actually has some specific plans as well, but I've certainly happened to share some other specific ones. If people are looking for guidance for the hospitality industry that I've come across, I probably have a whole list that I could pull together shortly that I'd be happy to share with you to send out, Samaled.
Right, thank you. And that prompted me to share the screen with everyone with contact information for all the folks in, at least here in the Western Mass area, who are helping small businesses with their plans to reopen, as well as with funding to continue to be able to reopen and grow their business. I'm also flashing on the screen the listing of all of our offices at Small Business Development Center throughout the state. We have offices all over Massachusetts, and you can go to our website and find the office closest to you. Fill out a request for counseling and get some help with that. So thank you. Let's see if there's any questions in here on the chat. I see that you posted the link to the websites. Thank you so much for doing that on the chat. People should be able to click on those. And I don't see any questions here in the Q&A. So maybe after we talk to Jay, we might be able to move on a little bit into more questions. So let's go ahead and ask Jay. Jay, why don't you go ahead and join us? So Jay is joining us from Jay's Bed and Breakfast. It's a historic bed and breakfast located in Holyoke, Massachusetts. And there you are, Jay. Go ahead and let me unmute you. Welcome. Welcome to today's webinar, Jay. Okay, we can't hear you just yet, so you're going to have to go ahead and press that button with the little microphone. There you go.
Can you hear me better now?
I can hear you now. Thank you.
I don't know why my webcam is not working properly, so I can't see the lights not coming on my.
You're fine. We can see you just fine.
You can see me? Okay. I didn't know if I look good or not.
You're fine. You're fine.
Yeah.
So Jay, can you tell us a little bit tell us about Jay's Bed and Breakfast, how long you've been in business? Just give us a quick review, a quick summary of where you've been in your business.
Hi, Heather, by the way. I met Heather before, I believe, at the Holyoke Chamber before. You did a presentation before and all that, so which is good. So, and I'm glad I was listening to you because you're the right person that I kind of need to, ask a couple of questions regarding, the reopening of, bed and breakfast in the area. But Jay's Bed and Breakfast, I've been open for 4 years. Can you guys see me good?
Yes.
Okay. I've been open for 4 years. Just last week was my 4th year anniversary of my bed and breakfast. It's basically a full service bed and breakfast. So I do not only stays, graduation, graduations, but bridal showers, baby showers, once a month or a couple of times a month, brunches and things. The other thing that I do is do all sources of catering and services as well. So, and then I also do for, shorter terms, usually for shorter terms where people will occupy the whole entire inn if they want to have like a family or a retreat for their company and things like that. Yeah. So.
Great, Jay. And can you share with us a little bit, how have your business been impacted by COVID-19?
It's been impacted very largely because I had to cancel approximately about 6 weddings, about 4 or 5 graduation parties, my anniversary party, bridal showers, baby showers, catering events, my brunches. So I had to come out of outside the box and basically do a curbside brunch to go. So I do those on Wednesdays, Saturday, and Sundays, but they're extremely slow at the beginning, because everybody didn't have anywhere to go and they missed my food and the atmosphere within the house. I didn't have local people in some of the committees who had supported me, coming by, ordering some food. And, I work with sometimes the women's shelter. They order some food for their people at the compañeras or they're out of Holyoke. They work with me on that. I also, with ROCA, which is a mass organization that works with ROCA and Job Corps, the combination of that. But basically, day to day, trying to stay open through that one of the things that's helped me a great deal. I also belong to the Massachusetts LGBT Chamber of Commerce, and connected with Grace Moreno, which is the president of CEO of the Mass Chamber of LGBT Chamber, was able to help me and guide me through some of their members and partners, such as Berkshire Bank, and connect me through the SBA, Massachusetts, how would I say, small businesses, and also the Holyoke Chamber and the mayor of Holyoke, Alex Moores, which is through his city halls has come up with some resources to try to help the small business community, but it's still difficult because for the last, say, 2 or 3 months, I have to find different ways to keep my doors open. And even after this, I don't know if I'll be able to keep my doors open.
So what I'm hearing you say, Jay, is a couple of things. Number one, you were somewhat fortunate in the sense that you have separate streams of revenue, not just the bed and breakfast and people staying in your place, but you also had a food service, a brunch in catering, and you've been involved with many different groups who are continuing to support you during this tough time. So you've get in touch with them. They understand you're still open. You're doing you've adapted by doing curbside delivery, or curbside pickup, I should say. And so you also have connected with a lot of the local institutions and local government to find out about what's available in your town in terms of helping small businesses, and you did get the help and the information. Furthermore, you connected with a chamber of commerce specifically for the LGBTQ community, and they connected you to lenders who are willing and able to take a little bit more time to help folks and educate them on how to access the various sources of funding that might be available out there to continue to sustain their business.
Exactly. And it only through me because if you know me a little bit, you gotta be persistent. You gotta stay up. This is my livelihood. Working in corporate before, I was working with corporate for many years, and when I opened up my bed and breakfast, it's a dream come true. It was a desire that I wanted to do, work within the hospitality industry at the same time, gave me flexibility of something that I wanted to do. I have my own control, even though I work with the public and work with clients and customers in different areas, and things like that. But it also gave me the ability to do my own thing, which is a lot of people that may want to own their own business. As a small business owner, it's not easy because I'm a sole proprietor. And I don't have any employees. So the people that work with me are per diem. So if I need them, I say, hey, are you available from your job? Can you give me 2 or 3 or 4 hours to help me work with this event or help me cater this event? Can you help me out in the kitchen? Can you help me prep? So it's difficult. So at the same time, I have to share the little profits with them. And sometimes I just break even or take a loss, but I still want to stay open. You know what I mean? I want to stay open.
Right. And so, Jay, I want to take a moment to remind everyone listening to today's webinar that while I'm asking questions of Jay, you can feel free to ask a question, type it in the Q&A or in the chat, either for Heather or Jay, because I'll be bringing back Heather again for Q&A. So if you have a question in regards to any of the guidance that you heard or something that you didn't hear about or something that you're still confused about, please do so do so now, and I will go back to it. So Jay, I wanted to ask you, what are your plans for reopening? Obviously, right now you can't reopen. You're still not in that phase. I think it's phase 3 or so, or that in the state of Massachusetts, that where you'll be able, hospitality businesses will be able to reopen. It might even be towards the tail end of phase 2. We're a bit unclear on that, but how are you planning to reopen your business, and how are you communicating with your customers right now, what you're doing?
One of the things is because inside my bed and breakfast, I do have, like, similar to what Heather was sharing, rooms that I can sit. I was able to sit 30 people very comfortably, but the table is they're very close to each other. One of the things that I'm finding, talking to different restaurants and different facilities that I know within in the Cape and outside of the Cape, that what are you guys doing? What is your plan? Some said we're not opening, period, because it's too much work. I am the only person, and me and my partner or someone else are the only two helps. And to do the turnarounds and the changings on it, I'm doing more research on it. So that way I can kind of prepare myself. I have an outdoor facility that I'm able to do more larger gatherings, for like say 30 people, but be able to have separate seating. People can sit 6 to 10 feet apart because it's an outdoor space, but nothing's guaranteed. But my bathroom facilities is inside the house. So people have to come in and out to do that. So when I'm thinking, I said, okay, if I have that means I have to have a staff to make sure that they clean up the bathroom right after that person comes in and out to even merely use the bathroom. You know what I mean? I'm just thinking I have to have sanitation stations. I have to have cleaning stations. I have to have servers. I would have to have a bar. So that's a big impact economically for me. You know what I mean? Economically for that. And then the other thing is I said, okay, if I'm going to have guests over the house, okay, is it worth it to have a person come in for one day and they're only going to pay like between $100 and $150 or $200 for the night, and then I have to clean the sheets, clean the room, leave it open. So it's kind of a catch-22, so to speak. But I'm looking at all options. I'm looking out to doing an outdoor porta potty so that I can have for outdoor facility, or maybe doing a bathroom, doing an outdoor bathroom so people can use, put hand wash, no touching hand wash the stations that people can put their feet on it, and the water comes and they can do that. There's no touching whatsoever. They don't have to turn on the water. But when they go somebody goes into the bathroom, that means I have to send somebody in the bathroom to make sure that they clean the bathroom, make sure, there's a lot of red tape on that I'm not familiar with. And I'm asking other restaurants and different places that I know that I partner with. And we're kind of coaching and guiding each other, and everybody's like, I don't know.
What about processing payments? And I've heard from a lot of small business owners definitely going away from handling cash because it's another potential source of contamination and something else they have to deal with. So they're doing everything electronically. Is that something that you're doing as well, or you plan to do, or you're considering?
Mostly I just use the Square. So I use the Square, my tablet. I don't even have like a station, like a lot of restaurants and places have like a Square station that Heather showed earlier. That's one of the things I have to look at. And I called a couple of people that know, you use this, how do you do that? Because Square, if I have a question, technical question, Square doesn't get back to you. There's nobody you can talk to. They do everything online, even though they're good. But I'm trying, okay, how do I revisit that? So it is easier for me. There's some of those challenges that I say, I need to talk to a live person. I don't want to talk to a computer or answer questions. Tell me, guide me, coach me on this. I don't want to sit there and then wait for you to respond. And then we may ask you another question and then we ask you, I don't have time for that. As a business owner, you try to simplify things. So if you call me, like when we chat, if you email me, fine, I understand technology is great, love it. You call me, I answer the phone, correct? So that's why I want to talk to the person. We can resolve whatever question on it. And then you can go about your business. I can go about my business. At the same time, we can be helpful to each other. Say, I don't have that answer, but I will email you something. If you have a question, call me and we can resolve it. So I'm more of a hands-on kind of a person. It could be an old age kind of thing, but still, but Square is what I'm using. So basically, regardless. And then on top of that, the percentages that I lose. So if I'm charging, like for example, I'm doing a special, this is out of I do a brunch or food to go for 2 people for $19.99. So you get a main entree and you get 4 sides. That's unheard of. Usually I was charging $20 per person for brunch, all you could eat, but now it's half that price.
Right.
Even with those prices, I get 5 to 10 people that order food from me during those days.
That's great. That's a great point. Is that technology, leveraging technology right now, your website, your social media, using the electronic payment processing, even with the fee that you're paying sometimes to use the electronic processing payment, you're still doing much better because you're still capturing customers and keeping your existing customers engaged. So that's great. So Jay, I do want to recognize we have on the call State Direct. Our regional director, Keith Gerard from the Berkshire office, and he has a question for you. Keith, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, Jay. I'm from the Berkshires, and so we
Yeah.
have a lot of businesses like yours, small operations and things.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, the impact of scale is important, like that, how much flow that you have, right, coming through your place, as well as having to take on all these additional expenses and things.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, have you rethought your pricing model, and how, because something has to give somewhere?
No, I've done that, but just to get the flow going, because remember when I found out that I couldn't open or everything was closed, it was a month and a half before I even started doing brunches. So it was there was no income coming in, nothing's coming in. I partnered up with a couple of different nonprofit organizations, which I had some people stay and stuff like that, but which is kind of everybody's on their little corners quarantine, so to speak. But I am evaluating those. I am evaluating the amount of food that I give and what I do. But now it's become more difficult, even 10 times as much, due to the fact that people have more choices. You can get in your car, you can drive around, make a pit stop, or get out the different locations that you can just grab food versus grabbing your food and going back home. So I am evaluating those things. Hopefully, and like the prices of food. So when I mentioned about Heather mentioned about food, prices go up. Prices go up. So I'm trying to evaluate how do I make it happy medium. But let's say I create a menu. I'm in the kitchen. I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm preparing food. Like if you were 30 or 40 other people are ordering food for me. You have to be mindful of that. But all of a sudden, only 5 people are buying. So what do I do with the rest of the food? You understand what I mean?
Right.
So I can make a la carte. I can make food at the time, but I'm just, okay, I'm waiting for you to call me. It's like a real retailer. When retail opens up the doors, they're waiting for people to walk in, to someone to say, hey, how are you? How could I help you?
Right.
So,
right.
but you still have to prepare food as if you have 10, 20, 30 people are going to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it seems
If that answers your question.
Yeah, well, it seems inevitable that prices are going to have to be raised.
Oh yeah, they're going to have to be
coming in, as well as as responding to all the changes that you have to make, and the more costly in terms of personnel and stuff like that. But it also sounds like what you're doing is you're also creating other values, other opportunities, other propositions that people can engage, right? Yeah. And that helps too.
Yeah, yeah. But it's difficult. It's difficult in the sense that you don't know. So again, even if let's say if I'm preparing for dinner or brunch with the expectation or hoping that I get a certain amount of people, it's me, myself, and I. So that means I get up early in the morning, I do all the prep, or go shopping a couple of days before, do all the prep for the menu for that day, cooking the food, have it, keep it warm, hot, and ready to go. But at the same time, okay, if I get a large group, that means I have to bring in a person or two to help me with that, and also cleaning. If not, if I don't get any, by a certain time, I look at it and say, do I have any orders? Do I have anything online? Any orders? If I don't, okay, that means all that food, I'm gonna have to, I gotta find a way to give it away, or or try to see what I can salvage.
So the third thing then is to control waste. So,
Exactly.
right.
Exactly.
Jay,
And
thanks so
then-
much. Thanks so much for your answer.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. So Heather, I did want to ask you, could you remind us again, when is the expected date for hospitality businesses to be allowed to reopen here in Massachusetts?
As far as I know, it was today for hotels, and other lodging. And looking at phase, there's two parts. This is phase two. There's two parts to phase two. The first part of phase two, so if you have a restaurant, it's outdoor dining. And then the second part of that will have reopened regular dining, but they don't have a set date for that. And that actually was in the safety standards that I shared, and I can share that again as well, just so everybody has that updated information. Okay.
Right. Thank you so much. And I do want to recognize Nancy Girardi is with us as well. She's the regional director of the MSBDC office up in Salem State University, Salem State. And if she wants to join us, Nancy, you can either make a comment or ask a question. In the meantime, we have another question here for Jay. Jay, did you get to apply for a PPP or an SBA loan to help you with during this time?
Yes, I applied for multiple loans on that. I'm waiting on the final. I was approved for a couple of things. I'm waiting on the final say on that for how, when the funds will be available. And then the other thing, I was on again, back to the LGBT Chamber of Massachusetts. They have once had someone from the SBA on it, that they were getting more information that we're going to channel down to be able to give us more guidelines that if you qualify and you are getting some fundings, how to use them, how to keep track of them, how to make sure that you use the funds correctly and not get misused, or make sure that you're doing the right thing, because there are some funds available, but I'm still waiting on guidelines for that.
So you have applied, you just haven't heard back yet.
No, I have applied. I have heard, yes, I do qualify for some. I'm just waiting for the final to talk to a couple of individuals or get some emails regarding that, so that I can reevaluate things. Reevaluate how am I going to be able to use these funds and how am I going to allocate them to kind of have more of an opening of my facility. Yeah.
Okay, great. And Heather, thank you so much, Jay, for answering that question. Heather did want to mention that she has another workshop coming up tomorrow for restaurants. Heather, do you want to say a little bit something about that?
Yes, this is a similar presentation to one that I gave for the Boston score about 3 weeks ago. And it's just some touch points. It's about an hour and a half for restaurants reopening. So I know many of the lodging facilities that have food service might be interested. And I did also want to mention that the reopening for lodging, you can't do meetings or events. That is in the descriptions for reopenings. Please be sure that you read all of those. I know that people are anxious to get open for those things, as they are a big source of income, but I don't want to see anybody getting in trouble with the rules. If anybody is interested in the other SCORE workshop, if you go to Merrimack Valley SCORE, New Hampshire, it is on the agenda for tomorrow. So Semla, there is a question in here too about rates. May I take that one?
Go ahead.
Okay, so there's a question. It seems that rates have to increase given the concept of leaving guest rooms vacant for 24 hours between guests. What other options can be considered? That's a question that I've gotten pretty much from literally 1,000 lodging properties that I've talked to in the last couple of months. Many lodging properties are not adjusting their rates that much, although I think they might find the need to do that within 6 months. It's going to be a question of what are you offering if you're going to adjust your rates to adjust for having those guest rooms vacant for 24 hours. What added value options can you offer to guests that are at least going to be seen as added value? Because if a lodging facility is going from $120 a room per night to up to $140 to $160, people are going to see those rate increases. And while they do kind of understand that there's a need for that, they're going to want to get something extra out of that. So I think it's going to be a balancing act for lodging properties, because they're going to try to have to come up with offerings that aren't going to cost them additional money to offer as well. So that's not an easy question to answer, but that is definitely something that lodging facilities are going to have to evaluate.
Great. And Heather, while you were speaking, there was another question that popped up. Someone's asking, what about events or private parties? What are the rules and regulations on that?
Okay, so that's part of step one of phase 2. It specifically says hotels and other lodging, but no events, functions, or meetings. And I also take that to mean, as one of the other articles that I read this morning, as in events, as in weddings, which has been coming up a lot.
So there's no, there at this moment, there's no things open, that's not allowed, correct?
I'm sorry, Jake, can you come again?
At this moment, they're not allowed, correct?
Yeah, you're allowed to open your rooms, but if you have events at your venue or any other type of functions or meetings, you are not as of yet.
Okay. Yeah, because
Okay.
I've been getting people ask me about a wedding. Could I do a wedding? Could I occupy the whole house and all that? I'm like, okay, once I find out what the guidelines are, maybe we'll be able to do something, but I'm not sure, you know, at this moment, because I don't want to get myself in trouble, and I just want to make sure that I'm on the right track with everything that's going on. You know what I mean? So, yeah, which makes sense. Which makes sense. So, now, Heather, my question to
So,
Heather is, could I have a question for Heather? Okay, Heather,
of
I have
course,
a,
Jake. Go ahead and ask your question
um,
of Heather. Sure.
I don't know, most of all the guidelines are geared toward like large chains or large facilities. Mine is, even though I have footage facility capabilities to do an outdoor and some indoors, I have 5 bedrooms. They're nearly close to each other. So there may be anywhere between 10 to 15 feet from each other. Some of the bedrooms have private bath and some are a share bath. So those are one of the questions that I'm trying to find guidelines on that. I can welcome your expertise on that, because you're pretty much on that.
Yeah, that unfortunately, I hate to sort of pass on that question, but sort of answer that. That seems to be changing. The guidelines for that changes state by state. You know, if Massachusetts, and I'm not seeing anything in there specifically about that. I did look through it several times. You know, I think it's a question of safety features. You know, from a bed and breakfast facility standpoint, you know, you're usually going to have less guests than a hotel statistically anyway. You know, I think, you know, just similar to my suggesting people do a dining room walkthrough, you know, I would go through perhaps with another person or another couple of people and, you know, walk through your facility and kind of look at, you know, if you have two people, you know, that are, you know, 10 feet down their door to door, you know, how many opportunities are they technically going to really have to cross each other's paths? You know, I think I might be a little biased here, but I mean, I think honestly, staying at a bed and breakfast is probably safer than staying at a huge hotel. There's a lot less traffic in it generally anyway, because it's smaller. You know, I applaud your being very concerned about that. That's fantastic.
No, but I'm just, I am concerned because if I have a couple of private and then share, the rest are
Yep.
share. So how does, you know, that means I have to, right after someone, I have to be mindful that someone used the bathroom and say, okay,
Yeah.
I got to go clean, or just kind of probably limit it. These are the 3 rooms that I'm using, private, and that share bath you use over there.
Yeah, I think from the perspective looking at it in an accommodations standpoint, I would just take one of the rooms or however many rooms that have a shared bath off of reservations capability.
Yeah.
Just because, you know, you can't stay on top of that anytime.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
who knows,
yeah.
you know,
Okay.
somebody might need to get up at 2 a.m.
Yeah, no, it just doesn't make any, you know, doesn't
Mm.
make any sense in that aspect. You just want to
Yep.
make sure that people are, you know, safe. Again, safety. You know, and one of the things that people, so now you'll be able to open. Oh my God, you got outdoor space. Blah, blah, blah. I said, yeah, but it takes a lot more. People think this is simple. That now, because some of the laws have to soften up and be able to open up your facility, that means they're not mindful of the amount of work that it takes and what you have to do in order to do that. So that's one of the things that I am aware of, that I keep in mind of. At the same, again, I say sole proprietor, I say sole owner. It's not like I have a large chain that you have 20, 30 employees or whatever, or 5 or 10 employees. I don't have that at this moment, which would love to have. But if you're only bringing in 5% of business, how do you pay the other individuals?
Right.
So,
Right. So, I mean, those are all so many important considerations and questions that a lot of the businesses are having during this moment of time, not just the hospitality businesses, but I mean, just trying to get to the point where you can actually generate some revenue so you can get your cash flow going and being able to address a lot of this, the cash poor issues is so important. But in the interest of time, because we're hitting against our 2 o'clock end time, this time there is a question that is still outstanding that I wanted to ask Heather in regards to doing events or at private properties, because one of our listeners today runs an Airbnb, and she has it's a business that she runs from her home. So Heather, is there any guidance in regards to Airbnbs and what they can and cannot do in their in a private property?
Yes, Airbnb actually just literally, I think it rolled it out this past weekend about some safety recommendations and standards. I know that they're not having people inspect. Unfortunately, they're going by what people are saying that they're going to do, but they're pretty good guidelines that they've rolled out. So if you haven't gotten that yet, I don't know if they sent it out by email. I was sent it by another lodging facility that pays attention to that. But I have looked at it. I would start there. I mean, realistically, having to clean a facility, it mentions, no way that you can clean all the dishware, utensils, et cetera, each time and still make a profit. Quite honestly, I would do it. I'm sorry if you feel that you can't make a profit on it. But if you also take into consideration that if you had someone stay at your B&B that was potentially infectious, because there are people that unfortunately are asymptomatic and they don't know they're infectious, I wouldn't risk making another guest sick. But that's my own personal opinion. If it takes, running it through a dishwasher one more time, I would take the time to go do it. I know that's an additional work, but quite honestly, all of the lodging facilities that are out there, they're having to do the same thing. And a lot of them have not had any business at all for months and months and months. Many of the lodging businesses that I've been talking to just in the last couple of months may not reopen, unfortunately. They have additional things, plus they have to pay for liability insurance and rooms and meals tax and a lot of other things that Airbnbs may not have to do. So,
Right.
which is a
And
good point.
what if you currently run a business and one of your clients is asking to host the event in their home? I know we're talking about hospitality today, but Heather, did you happen to know the answer to that? If a client of yours is asking you to host an event or gathering at their home, if there might be any guidance on that?
I'm not a lawyer. I
Yeah.
don't know if liability waivers would be applicable. All I can say is I would recommend maybe talking to a personal and business lawyer to see. That's not
That's a
even
good
a
answer.
business. I wish I had a better
Throughout all
answer that
this,
one.
we haven't really touched the issue of liability, but as you mentioned before, um, on one hand, you're having to do all of these additional steps to make sure that everything is sanitized and clean between guests and, whether it's washing linens more often or cleaning all of the utensils, or maybe using disposable utensils and spending a lot of money on that. You having to do that. But on the other hand, there's a liability that if you don't and somebody does get sick, or even if you do and somebody gets sick, you should have a good legal advisor that can help you navigate, that situation in case the guest does come back and complain that they got the virus from staying at your facility. That's a huge concern, I'm sure, for many owners. And Jay, I know you wanted to make a comment. Go ahead.
No, I was just talking about, that's one of the points that I was going to bring up regarding liability. Again, I don't get me wrong. I want to open my business up and make sure that I have things going on here 3 months ago, you know, 2 months ago, 3 months ago. But liabilities, I have to still go talk to my insurance carrier and ask them, what is, if I open up, am I liable or am I not liable? And that's a good point that Heather brought up. Due to the fact that I'm going to reach out to my attorney as well and say, okay, what is the risk? What are the protocols regarding reopening, and and not being sued, or all of a sudden people can say, I got your, that's a big stain on your business. Can you imagine as a small entity like mine taking a risk on that, as well as reopening, and someone claims that they got sick, whether they could have gotten, they came here, but they went to visit 10, 15 people before they got back. All of a sudden they get sick, but they're at my place. Do you know what I mean? So that's one of the risks that one has to take and all that. I have people call me. I had a call last night. Are you open? Yes, I am open. What can you rent me a room for tonight? I said, no, I'm sorry. I'm not only taking rooms for a minimum of a week. Oh, okay, no problem. And they're asking me, well, what are your prices? Between $150, $200. Oh, that's too expensive. Go find somewhere else. See ya. I don't take because of, as much as I want to open and have that client come in, but to come in for 24, 8, 10 hours, it's like Heather said, the guidelines on it, the government's being very conscious of that, because it could be a trickle effect, continue from one person to another, to another person, to another person, to another person, and then you could be held liable. I stayed at Jay's Bed and Breakfast, and I happened to me over there. How do I disprove that? And how are they going to prove that? They always say, but I was at your place. You know what I mean? So maybe you have more of information on that, Heather, than I do, but that can give us some guidings on that, you know?
Yeah, it's a lot of the hospitality lawyers that I read their blogs have been discussing this, and they're, unfortunately, I mean, and I always hate to scare people, but they do say that we are probably going to see things like that coming, but they also do point out the fact that it's going to be extremely difficult to prove, because anybody staying at a lodging facility would have to prove without a shadow of a doubt that they stayed at the lodging facility for a week and had absolutely no contact with anybody else and didn't leave. So, we can't control if someone goes out to the local place and uses someone's kayak. They could have caught it from, touching the paddle. So
Exactly.
Right. So I do like, and we're just out of time. Thank you so much, Jay and Heather, for joining us today. I did want to end with that comment that you made before, which was preparing yourself with statements. Think of all the questions people might have and start coming up with the answers ahead of time. How are you going to react? How are you going to train your folks to react to those questions that may come up from guests? So preparing in advance for complaints or questions or concerns in advance will come a long way in helping you maintain a good reputation for your business and being able to say, listen, this is just the way it is. This is our policy. This is to keep you safe, keep our staff safe. And so that's so important. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you. And Heather, if you can email me that information from the slide sheet, Somali, please give her my email. I think you may have it already, Heather. I will really appreciate that. Thank you.
I do. After this presentation, I will ask Heather if she'd be so kind as to send us a copy of her slides, and I will share it with all the folks who attended today's webinar on Zoom. And again, thank you all for joining us today. I know we've gone over time. I did want to do a quick last minute closure on this on today's webinar. I want to thank all of the organizations who helped make this webinar possible, along with other webinars that we've been hosting in the last several months, including SCORE, the Center for Women Enterprise, Valley Community Development, Franklin County CDC, Common Capital, and we also have Mastro Capital Corporation, the MSBDC offices in Salem State and Clark University, as well as our stakeholders, the funders of many of these technical assistance programs, the Small Business Administration, the State of Massachusetts Executive Housing and Economic Development Office, UMass Eisenberg School of Management. So thank you all. And this concludes the webinars for this week. I'm sure we will be coming up with more webinars coming soon. So please stay tuned on our Facebook, on our website. And I did flash the contact information for all of the folks in the local region and here in the Party Valley who you can connect to get more advice and guidance on how to reopen your hospitality business. Once again, thank you, Jay. Thank you, Heather, for being with us today. Thank you all for attending today's webinar. Please be sure to share this information with other folks who might need it. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy the rest of the week.
You as
Talk
well.
soon.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.